if you can't tell from behind me, my backyard is mostly swamp. And this is caused by clay-based soil and a high water table within my environment. Soil is a pretty big abiotic factor within my biome. Since the soil is clay-based, it is able to hold water incredibly well, which is another abiotic factor within the environment. The water in the rich soil allows for many different plants to be able to grow, as seen around me, from trees to ferns. The soil gives the plants nutrients, and the water obviously gives the plants water to be able to perform photosynthesis. Moving on from that, we have rocks. Rocks are also another pretty important abiotic factor within my environment. Rocks can serve as a safe point within these very muddy climates that can give animals a sense of protection. If you just look under one rock, there can be hundreds upon hundreds of ants, termites, anything living under it. This is a pretty prime example. As you can also see on these rocks, they're covered in moss, which the moss will break down the rock, slowly taking nutrients from it. They are pretty vital, especially in really, really wet climates. Now, leading from something that's incredibly dead to something that used to be alive, dead animals and plants. Moving on from rocks, we are moving on to dead stuff. As you can see here, I have a pile of dead trees. These trees are slowly decomposing and returning their nutrients back into the soil. This also happens with dead animals. As an animal dies, a fungus or some other thing usually eats it or decomposes it, which puts the nutrients back into the animal or back into the fungus, which then they die and it goes back into the soil. And it contributes to this cycle that we have going on, which all of the cycle being fueled by the sun. If you look around me in this area I'm in, you'll be able to notice the sun. Now, unfortunately, it is sundown, so I can't just point my camera up at the sun, but you can clearly see the light. The light is what fuels all of the trees and the grasses around me. And then by fueling the grasses and the trees, they fuel the animals, because guess what eats those trees and those grasses? Animals. It's all a cycle, and without the cycle, nothing would be able to be alive. Without any of these abiotic factors, nothing would be able to live. They are some of the most key parts of our environment. We would have nothing without abiotic factors, as they are the base of everything. That includes water, air, sun, dirt, dead animals, everything like that. And as the cycle continues, everything will rinse and repeat. Before I'm able to move on to the plants and animals section of this video, I first have to talk about the climate that me and these animals reside in. Since I'm here in northeast Ohio, there's not so mild weather. It can be extremes from negative 10 degrees outside to over 100 degrees within the summer. In order to be able to live within this environment, you have to be pretty hardy and know how to adapt. If you're a mammal, you have to have a thick coat during the summer and be able to shed it during the spring and summer months. If you're a plant, you have to know how to flower and be able to, quote-unquote, hibernate during the winter, such as trees and many types of bushes within this area do. Ohio is a temperate deciduous forest. That means most trees have wide leaves that are shed within the winter. This allows the tree to, quote-unquote, sleep. It's storing all of the energy it's built up throughout the year and then shedding its leaves so that way the stoma don't dry out the tree during the winter. Many other kind of plants within this environment also follow a similar pattern, such as bushes and shrubs. Many plants can also die within the winter, but they died in the same spot, so their seeds resprout and then they reflower within the summer and spring months. Overall, this climate can really affect how plants and animals live within it. Finally, on to the more interesting part, the animals. As we transition to the animals, I'm going to start with the cottontail rabbit. The cottontail rabbit is something I see very commonly within my backyard. I get at least a couple every year during the spring and summer times, which is when they are most active. They are primary consumers, so they are on the bottom of the food pyramid. as they are eaten by pretty much everything that is carnivorous and larger than them. They mostly eat grasses and clovers, as they are herbivores. Now, as they eat the grasses and clovers, they help keep these in check. They keep the population from overgrowing and out-resourcing themselves, which is a common trend that we will soon see with all of these animals. The next animal within this section is field mice. Now, you'll oftentimes see field mice within your house because they are attracted to the warm spaces, especially during the winter. But they are actually most often during the spring and summer months. They are secondary consumers, as they are surprisingly omnivores. They eat both small grasses, nuts, and berries, but they will also be known to eat small insects and other mammals, such as just regular beetles that you would see. Despite what you've been led to think, they don't just live in people's houses. Underground, they live in very complex burrows during the year to help store their food and stay away from predators. Now, as I was telling earlier, they also help keep the grasses in check within the year, and they also help keep the insect population down, which allows for less competition, which means better bugs are bred throughout the year, because they are mostly eating the ones that are unable to breed. Moving next to our next animal is the cardinal. Cardinals are known for being active all throughout the year and are also seen all throughout North America. They tough out the winter here in Northeast Ohio, as they do not migrate south for warmer weather. They are built for eating pretty much nuts and berries, but they are omnivores, so they do eat small snails and other small worms and all of that kind of jazz. They are known for being, in spirituality at least, a sign of a loved one who has lost, and they help keep, just like I said before, the insect and snail population healthy and hardy by eating the ones that aren't so healthy, and they also help keep the berry and all that kind of stuff down. And as they poop, they do spread the seeds from these berries, which then in turn create more berry trees because the poop acts as a fertilizer and spreads them around everywhere. We finally get to move on to the more interesting animals, predators, and I will be starting with my lovely little cats here. This is true. They are domestic American shorthairs, which is basically another word for a cat mutt, and they will eat just about anything, but they are obligate carnivores. So, as they are obligate carnivores, they will only eat meat. True has been known to eat just about anything, from mice to the carpet. And that includes his brother. Now, cats are not native to Ohio, but the bobcat is. But domestic cats are not. So if you do have a cat, it's good to just make sure they aren't absolutely ravaging your local ecosystem. But they can play a good role, as they do eat mice and are oftentimes good for whenever it comes to keeping mice out of your home, especially during the winter, because they will act as something that will detract them. And moving on to our last animal is my dog, Bo. Now, Bo has been known to eat just about anything, as he is another omnivore, but they lean more on the carnivorous side, as they do benefit from a more meat-based diet. But they are able to digest plant vegetables and all that kind of stuff. He is a golden retriever and dachshund mix, and due to this, he will find just about anything he wants to eat. Once I caught him eating a whole thing of baby rabbits, and another time I found him eating a pair of deer legs in the woods from a dead deer. He's getting older though, so he's kind of slowed down. Overall, these animals, they all keep each other in check by balancing everything out to make sure something doesn't get too high and something doesn't get too low. Because, like, for example, the cardinals, they'll eat the less strong insects, so the strong insects will be able to breed and make the insect population more strong, and they'll eliminate competition for other insects. And whenever it comes to plants, they'll make sure that the plants don't outcompete themselves because there's too many of them. This ends our animals. So moving on from that, I'm out here in my backyard to give you some real examples of plants that just happen to live within my area. So here we're going to start with possibly my favorite and probably the prettiest out of all of these, the bulbous bittercrest. This is native to most areas in swamps in North America. Thankfully, my backyard, as you can see, is a swamp, so we happen to have it grow by us. They usually bloom during early summer and late spring, and they are also edible. Their leaves are known to have a peppery taste to them. I would advise washing them before you ingest them. Now, these can be eaten by pretty much any type of herbivore, mostly deer within my area, and turkeys. Now, yeah, that's pretty much all about them. So if we move just a little bit to the right, we can see what is called a skunk cabbage. Skunk cabbage are not edible. If you eat one, you will get a stomachache and you will not be thanking yourself later. And if these are hurt, they do tend to smell quite awful. That's why they're called skunk cabbage. Despite everything about them, deer do really like snacking on the leaves of these. Yeah. This is also seen all over North America. Moving on to a little fern that most people probably recognize because it's just a general fern. It's called a sensitive fern. Now, these are also seen all over North America. Do not eat them. They're poisonous, I'm pretty sure. And nothing really eats them within our area, but they're oftentimes very popular in gardening because they are able to live within pretty shady areas. Now, if we move on to that, we can see right here, which is a black gum tree. Now, this tree, its ferns and its branches and its leaves are snacked on most commonly by deer within our area, and they are most active within the spring and the summertime because coniferous trees, that's what they do. Now we move on to my favorite little thing within this area is fork moss. Broom fork moss. So fork moss, right over here. As you can see at the base of this tree, which is right next to some handy dandy carpenter ants. Fork moss are very tough and most commonly eaten by birds within our area, but I oftentimes see the carpenter ants just kind of chilling in the fork moss as you do. They're very good just for covering up space, especially if you enjoy gardening. And yeah, that's pretty much all about fork moss.